Good to be here tonight. Appreciate the invite. As Virginia said, I'm the guy who likes to spend a lot of time on spreadsheets and making fancy little charts. So that's my role tonight. We did hand out a chart to everybody. I don't think everybody got one. I wasn't expecting this large of a crowd, so this is a pleasant surprise that I ran out. But what I want to talk about specifically and what you have in front of you is really the analysis of the county M&O, which is maintenance and operations. Many of you know when you get your tax bill, I got mine right here, there's many lines of taxation, okay? And when we're talking about the M&O mill rate, we're talking about one specific line off of your tax bill. So I don't want to get confused. It says county M&O, last year 6.650. But if you look at your tax bill, you got school M&O, you got a school bond, you have a county bond, you have a fire district, and you have a state. So there's lots of pieces that make up that total tax bill. But the mill rate we're speaking about that was voted to be raised, is the county M&O, which was 6.65 last year. What you're looking at in your chart there, and I don't like being this far back, but might as well use a wireless mic, amen? All right. What you're looking at here is an analysis just of that county M&O, okay? And this is for fiscal year 2011, and I've had these numbers out there for a while, and I haven't about 99% confident they're accurate, but there's always anybody who likes to play with data, his biggest fear is that one of them turn out not to be accurate, but we're pretty confident that working with the finance director of the county and some other folks that these are pretty accurate. I don't think the argument tonight or the disagreement with the county, with the board, is on the numbers, but it's more of a philosophical disagreement on what's taking place. But if you look, you see two columns there. One's called current, one's called proposed. That proposed actually now is passed. Okay, that's what that's already been voted on, so it's not really proposed anymore. But current was last year. And the top line up there, you see the county M&O mill rate, 6.65, and the proposed or passed went to 7.6 mills. Now that's just the mill rate is just a fancy name for a percentage, and if you divide that number by 1,000, you would have your percentage. But instead of having a long number with a bunch of zeros in front of it, they call it a mill rate, and they move the decimal point over. But that's a number that's multiplied times the value of your house, your assessment, that gets you your tax dollars for this line of your tax bill. Now, if you look at the current column, so the budget that we're ending the year with, we began the year with $19.4 million. These are all in millions of dollars. Everybody see the 19.4? Okay. This is the proposed going forward, okay? So we have $19.4 million in the fund right now after the year. That's the reserve, okay? They expect revenues of $48 million. They expect expenses of $51.4 million, okay? Expenses are greater than revenues, okay? Reasons that they're greater than revenues is because everybody's property value went down. So for the county, revenues, your tax money. For you, it's an expense. For the county, it's a revenue, okay? But that's your tax dollars that you pay. So keeping the mill rate the same as it was last year, we end the year with a 16.0 reserve. That's $16 million at the end of the year. That means the budget that's been proposed the way it is, we would end this year with $16 million left over in the fund, okay? Now, the county needs to maintain a 25% balance, okay? When they say a 25% reserve, that means 25% of what their expenses are, okay? And you can see that 25% reserve is equal to 12.8. So above and beyond the reserve, they would end the year with $3.2 million above and beyond what an appropriate reserve or rainy day fund or whatever you call it. You don't want to operate with a $0 in the bank at the end of the year. It's also important to keep a bond rating and credit rating for the county, that you're not totally bankrupt every year. So you can see leaving the mill rate the same still gives us $16 million in the fund at the end of the year, of which 3.2 is above and beyond the 25% reserve that's recommended, okay? And that equals 31%. That's where you see your 31%. So that gives us a 31% reserve at the end of the year. That's keeping the mill rate the same, okay? So I know Roy has some petitions up there about cutting $3 million out of the budget, and we had a lot of, people asking the budget to be cut, We have people saying, well, the mill rate has to go up or else they're going to have to cut this, going to have to cut that. The truth is, we don't have to cut nothing. The budget, the way it's submitted right now, we end the year with $3.2 million above and beyond the 25% reserve. So it's not an argument about if we don't pass this mill rate, we're going to have to lay off sheriffs, or we're going to have to lay off this. That has nothing to do with the argument, okay? The argument here is you leave the mill rate the same, you end up with this much extra. You raise the mill rate, you end up with this much extra. That's the difference between raising and not raising a mill rate. And it's a philosophical question and decision that needed to be made by the board. You see the proposed, which is now the passed. That's raising it to 7.6. The beginning balance is the same. The revenues would go up because the mill rate goes up. Goes up to 50.9. The expenses are exactly the same. It's the same budget. You end with a balance of 19 million. All right, that 19 million is 3 million more than you would have ended up if you left the mill rate the same. 25% is the same number. So you end up with 6.1 million above and beyond the recommended 25% reserve. Okay, and that's 37% reserve. Okay, so the decision that had to be made last week or the week before, whenever it was whether this county ended in a position with a reserve that equaled 31% of the next year's budget or 37% of the next year's budget. By the way, I just looked at the school board today. Finally got a hold of their budget. They're going into next year with a 7% reserve. Okay, they held their mill rate, and they're providing a huge. They're providing about $13.5 million tax cut to the county by keeping their mill rate the same. If the county M&O mill rate was the same, it would provide about a $4 million tax cut to the county. By raising it, it's closer to $1 million. Okay, so it's really a $3 million question or dilemma that we have, or disagreement that we have. What do we do with the $3 million? We're raising the mill rate to create $3 million extra dollars in a reserve. So we're not raising the mill rate to pay for the budget this year, because the budget's paid either way. And that's my biggest argument with it. I don't like prepaying my taxes for future years. If the reserve is big enough, the way things are now, then come back to me next year at the same time, same place. Tell me what your new mill rate is you're proposing. Tell me the new budget that you're proposing, and I'm an adult and I'll deal with it. I'll probably tell you to cut your budget, but it's equivalent to saying if the mill rate stays the same, you'll get $100 off your taxes. But up over yonder, a couple years out, we see something bad. So we're just going to let you have a $25 tax cut. We're going to keep 75 of that for you. We're going to hold it for you. Because in a couple years from now, we're going to say, hey, we didn't raise your taxes. Now, my problem with that is whenever government sets money aside for a couple years later, something's bound to happen where it ain't there when you get there. There's lots of moving pieces to our budget. There's lots of different things that are out of our control. So raising that $3 million is a nice idea to save, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think we need it, and that was my argument. And I believe, it's not a question. Again, I'm going to repeat it, but I'm about done. It's not a question if we don't have this mill rate and we lose sheriffs off the street. That's not it. The question is, if we raise this mill rate now to avoid tough decisions in the future, and I believe that's why the mill rate's being raised now, to create excess reserve to avoid those tough decisions in the future. That's all I got. I thank you for your time.